Human history is such a complicated issue when it comes to understanding our own timeline of evolution. When did our ancestors reach our location, our country, or even our neighborhood? When did they stop being nomads and settle into more of a civilized type of role? Ask an archaeologist and you'll get any number of theories, because it's not always crystal clear in spite of our technology. Today, we're exploring recent discoveries under the waters of Lake Huron and how they might help rewrite the history of humans in North America. We'll get into it on this episode of The Weekly Strange. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Weekly Strange. I'm your host, John F. Mers, author, actor, adventurer. I'm a sucker for the theory that humans existed long before conventional theory insists they did. I grew up reading the fictional accounts of prehistory from the likes of Robert Howard, Tolkien, and many more. It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? This idea that in spite of glaciers and massive oceans, there might have been advanced human civilizations that lived on our continents and built amazing ancient cities, calculated insane astronomical equations, and did their best to preserve their wisdom in spite of global cataclysms, only to see their achievements wiped out not necessarily by nature itself, but by the ego of early academics who found a theory that supported their belief system, and they just went with it, ignoring even the best scientific evidence that pointed to the contrary. Now, today, we're looking at the discoveries made by archaeologists under the waters of Lake Huron that have helped underscore the need for a more, let's say, flexible mentality when it comes to what we believe in terms of a timeline of human population of the Americas. Now, the Great Lakes of North America are massive. In fact, they are the world's largest freshwater system. But they haven't been around nearly as long as some people think. In fact, there are other man-made monuments, like Stonehenge, for example, that are actually older than the Great Lakes. But what makes the Great Lakes so interesting is how they were formed. Massive glacial sheets of ice covered a lot of North America at one time, and these sheets, which could be miles in thickness, literally scraped the ground beneath them as they advanced and retreated time and time again. These glaciers carved out canyons, rivers, even the Great Lakes themselves. I grew up literally right down the street from a glacial pond, so it's amazing what they were able to accomplish. Toward the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 years ago, the area around the Great Lakes underwent massive changes as these glaciers moved across the landscape. In places, the area left behind by a retreating glacier would become boggy, making it perfect landscape for migrating mammals like caribou, musk ox, foxes, and many smaller mammals as well. And behind those migrating animals, there were ever-present hunters as well, keen to hunt and trap so they could continue to survive with the rest of their people. And what has become readily apparent in the Great Lakes region, and specifically Lake Huron, is that these early humans were much more advanced in their hunting than had previously been thought. In addition, evidence found at this site that we'll talk about in a moment actually points to the fact that these early humans weren't some isolated band of hunter-gatherers, but were connected to trade routes that ran all the way to the coast of Oregon, thousands of miles away. Now, the site that has made all of this discovery possible is known as Drop 45, and its location is roughly off the thumb of the Michigan Peninsula, as you can see here in this photo. Now, this site is currently underwater, 120 feet below the surface, in fact, so archaeologists that have been studying it have all had to be scuba trained. Drop 45 is located along what is known as the Alpena-Amberley Ridge, or AAR. This ridge was at one time, over the course of thousands of years, on dry land, and it provided a highway of sorts for animals migrating across the region and also for the humans who hunted them. As time went on and Lake Huron started to form, the AAR slowly receded beneath the waves, first becoming an archipelago before giving itself up entirely to the waters. Now, obviously, you might think that the lands around Lake Huron would be full of awesome archaeological finds, given the humans that lived and hunted there. Any reasonable person would think that. Unfortunately, due to centuries of farming, pesticides, land development, and more, the soil that surrounds Lake Huron has grown increasingly acidic, which tends to break down all manner of artifacts, wood, stone, you name it, and it ruins dig sites along the shores of Lake Huron. So scientists shifted their approach and started exploring underwater. And it was here, back in 2014, that they started making serious finds. And what helped, interestingly enough, was Lake Huron's cold water. University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee archaeologist Ashley Lemke says, quote, "The stuff in the Great Lakes is like Pompeii, where the water is like the ash, sealing these deposits completely intact." In other words, the sites uncovered, like Drop 45, have been remarkably well preserved, yielding scientists an incredible number of interesting finds. Now, Drop 45's full name, if you will, is Drop 45 Drive Lane, and it's called this because at this location it became readily apparent to scientists that it was a route by which animals were basically funneled into a kill zone. Archaeologists noted the presence of multiple hunting blinds where humans would await their prey and launch surprise attacks on them. The animals, meanwhile, were being funneled through the use of rocks that gradually narrowed until the animals were effectively herded into traps at the end of the drive lane. It's a fantastic find that details just how accomplished human hunters were at this time, and how ingeniously they could devise methods to make hunting relatively easier than simply running across an open plain and hurling spears and hoping for the best. And speaking of hunting, digging through the silt at the bottom of the lake yielded other surprises as well. Flakes of chert, which was a type of rock used for making arrowheads, spear tips, and other tools, was found in abundance, as were obsidian flakes. And that part got scientists quite excited, because obsidian exists nowhere near Michigan. In fact, they could only conclude after extensive chemical analysis that the obsidian must have come from the coast of Oregon, meaning the humans who hunted the AAR and drove caribou and other animals into clever hunting traps must have had contact with people living on the coast of Oregon. That there was, in effect, a trade route spanning thousands of miles over 10,000 years ago tends to fly in the face of more conventional thought that suggested that these early bands of human hunter-gatherer tribes were mostly isolated and kept to themselves. On the contrary, it now appears that there was likely a burgeoning trade network that allowed for the intermingling of tribes, the exchange of goods and knowledge, and perhaps much more. Shared wisdom around that time period would have been critical for the survival of various groups of people. Animal migration routes were no doubt among the most discussed topics, but so too would be hunting techniques, foraging advice, weather and climate change, and much more. The findings at Drop 45 highlight how much about this era we still don't know. The stone-lined lane that the Drop 45 hunters used is fascinating in and of itself. It shows how organized they were in the seasonal hunting of these animals. The hides that were located on nearby hills, as well as other structures nearby, clearly illustrate that these early hunters were intimately attuned to the behavior of their prey, and took steps to maximize the harvesting of these animals to the maximum benefit of the tribes that hunted them. And this is where it gets interesting. The structures that scientists have found are relatively unseen elsewhere, although similar hunting sites have been discovered in places in Alaska, such as at the Kuzitrin River, prompting the obvious question, did the hunters that used Drop 45 originate or otherwise know the people from Alaska? Or was this another example of the exchange of wisdom along the trade route that stretched to Oregon? The stone artifacts found at the Drop 45 site are also unlike other artifacts found at other sites in the area, puzzling scientists as to who exactly the hunters of Drop 45 actually were. They know, for example, that they were not the first people to inhabit the area. Other sites around the region have been successfully dated to 12,000 years ago, and the people who inhabited those sites are generally thought to have used the methods of the Clovis tradition, a tool-making system most often found across much of North America. However, the artifacts from Drop 45 seem entirely disconnected from the Clovis tradition. So who were they? Were they a band of people from Alaska who had indeed crossed down the coast to Oregon before hearing of the caribou across the Great Lakes region and decided to move east to hunt them, bringing with them a new system of tool making and other techniques? Scientists don't have all the answers yet, but exploration of the area is ongoing, and archaeologists are hopeful that continued investigation will lead to more groundbreaking discoveries, and possibly more clues about who these hunters were, their traditions, and possibly even their origin story. By 8,000 years ago, Lake Huron had almost completely formed, sinking the migration routes of the animals that used the Alpena-Amberley ridge and the humans that hunted them. Caribou and other prey would have likely found new lands to migrate to, and with them the hunters. As such, it's highly unlikely that we'll find out what happened to this particular band of hunters. Unless, of course, another site like the one at Drop 45 is located someplace else and scientists are able to definitively conclude that after the waters rose in Lake Huron, this group of humans then migrated to a certain point and inhabited that area, likely along the same lines as the animals they hunted. Only time will tell, and it will likely be exponentially more difficult given that archaeological sites on land are often disturbed or ruined by the very things that ruined the land sites in the Great Lakes region, humans themselves. At the moment, the band of hunters at Drop 45 exist as a mysterious anomaly that can't be traced back to another tribe or group. They show up in the region, hunt for as long as the land yielded good resources to take advantage of, and then vanished into the pages of history once the waters of Lake Huron rose, forever sealing their artifacts away in a sort of time capsule, until scientists were able to open it. But even now, the mystery of who they were and where they came from remains unsolved. They left as they came, unknown, but not unknowable, thanks to the efforts of archaeologists. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode of The Weekly Strange. If you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my new uploads. We post new episodes of The Weekly Strange 2 times a week, and members of the channel get early access to every new video that comes out, so please join the channel as well. Share this video with anyone you think might like it so we can grow the channel. And speaking of memberships, don't forget to check out the perks for joining my channel and supporting my efforts to bring you all some great entertainment. But for now, thank you for watching and listening. I will see you next time for our 25th episode. Until then, good night.